Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Analytics Corner. Today we're reviewing the Carlton game in the Marsh series versus Fremantle. Let's just get straight into it. Carlton kind of like to tease us, don't they? Every pre-season we get to this situation where we're kind of really excited, really raring to go. Expectations are high. And we've kind of had the same process for nearly a decade now where something happens and we kind of have that uh-oh moment. Now, I'm looking at the forums and a lot of people are saying it is that uh-oh moment. But let's just break the game down into its fundamentals. So, let's firstly say, the skill execution was really poor. And if we go through the quarters of football, there was a lot of missed kicks. There was a lot of kicking it out of bounds on the full from very simple positions. Field kicking was kind of some of the worst we've seen at Carlton Football Club for a long time. And it was against a very weak outfit. But one thing that I won't let slide is not to say the importance of players like Mark Murphy and Patrick Cripps. Now, these guys statistically do create a kind of like suction, if you will, in the midfield. And I think it's very, very prevalent to the way that David Teague wants us to play. I think if you watch Cripper, he naturally draws players to him. And when we look at individual performances today, there's probably not a lot that you would say you'd go and scream from the top of the rooftops about. But there is players like Fisher and like Walsh who had over 25 touches each and they found space. And that is what's really important about this game style. It's the ability to manage and find space. We look and we saw that, there was times where we did really get on top of Fremantle in the contest. But a lot of players went missing today. And for me, I try not to read too much into it because it is pre-season, and when we were getting excited last week because of Collingwood, this happened when we brought a very similar team out. I do think at the moment what this shows us is that the ability to play in a physicality type game with our best 22 versus our next best 22, I think we fit into the category of a lot of other teams. If there's key injuries, we are kind of kiboshed. There's a lot of players that would replace other players of similar level, but we haven't really got someone that is itching to break out into that elite category. I think the forward line as well, for me, when I was watching the forward line, it kind of looks devoid of structure. You could see that they were kicking quite a lot to the half-forward flank. And that will work when we've got players like Betts there. But it didn't work with the setup we've got. Some takeaways, I think, though, you've got to see it, is Martin in the first half. And let's have a quick closer look at Martin. As you can see here, in the first half, this guy was phenomenal. And there's no getting away from it that, for me, Martin is one of the strongest players we've brought through our doors for a long while. And if you look at the heat map there, it is phenomenal. He's obviously rotated through the midfield and had time in the forward half, as we know. And I thought when he was at the forward line, he really did look our most dangerous avenue, our most focal point. He kind of is that player that can make anything happen. I thought he really brings players as well into the forward line really well. He's not a selfish type footballer. He does look to bring people in. And I think when you combine that with Eddie Betts' ability as well to bring people inside 50, I think that you've really got a strong forward line there. I know it didn't work this week, but you've also got to think that for me, Betts is a very key cog in how we play. I think SBS always is a key cog. And I think when you look at how Jack Martin plays, you can see how that's going to work. You can see when he's got McKay there, you can see McGovern. Kind of reminds me a little bit like, what Caddy will do for the Tigers. The amount of times he takes a mark inside 50, quickly plays on and hits it to Tom Lynch in the goal square. He has that type of vision. If we take a close look at the heat map, one thing that really excites me is his ability to tackle around the ground. It's a key fundamental of Teague's game plan, and that is pressure. And this guy really showed it. And bearing in mind, these are stats for a half. So, you shouldn't do it, but let's just double it. That's 18 touches, 4 marks, 10 tackles, 2 goals. If that is his, say, output weekly, you're going to be very, very happy with it. Now, we've got a bit of a treat for us today. We've actually got the lovely Kayne Watkins, who was my on-field eyes. So, as some of the highlights play, let's just listen to what he had to say about Jack Martin's game.
What a pick-up he's going to be for us, I reckon. What a big pick-up. He was, in the first half, he was the standout for me. I really wanted to get in the second half, I was telling myself, I want the ball in Jack Martin's hands. He spent quite a lot of time in the midfield, which I was pleased about because we can then use his skill and ability to move around packs in the midfield. So I can see him having a big part in season 2020. Fisher. He's just so silky and all that. So I don't think it was his best game today, but he was definitely in the best out of the best players who played today. He played mostly at the centre bounce, a lot of centre bounces today, and I just loved he played there because he's just so silky with his moves. And there was one play, I think it was the last quarter, and someone tapped down to Fisher, and he used his left leg, and he just kicked it down low into half forward, and it was like it skimmed along the ground. So I really liked that from Fisher. Yeah, I think he's going to have a good season for us this year. Next player was Jack Martin.
And I think Keno's right. He is that type of player that you want the ball in hand as much as possible. You want him to be there in and around the ball, looking to make things work. He is that type of player that makes things work for you. And for me, yeah, a really exciting acquisition to our beautiful Blue Boys. Let's have a look at someone else as well. I mean, we'll save probably the best till last, but we'll go with David Cunningham next. Now Cunners, for me, he's an interesting prospect. He worked really well, and as the heat map gets brought up now, you can see he did more of his impact in the forward half of the ground. Now, he did rotate in the midfield. I thought he came alive towards the end of the game when he played a little bit more forward. And you can see here, this is another thing we talk about, pressure. And this guy has got the pressure. He looks to put a bit of pressure on the guy exiting 50. And you can see the tackles there just scattered around almost. It's almost like he's a brick wall. He's like a corridor of uncertainty for the half-back flankers to get out. And I really enjoyed his game. For me, where it stands at the moment, I think he is in our forward six. And for me, these are the reasons why. He's got very clean hands in tight spaces. There was a few times that when he works down that, particularly down that flank, he's in the pocket. He's looking to handball it back into traffic. He's looking to handball it to the next runner. And I really enjoy that about Cunner's game. I think if he can stay fit, and that is the big if, I think he's a very important acquisition. He reminds me of the kind of way he goes about his business, almost like a Tom Papley type player. He's just a little energy ball. As the highlights play, let's just hear what Kayne took out of that game.
I think he spent the first half in the midfield, and then in the second half he spent a bit more time in the forward line, I think. From what I saw, his bounce is very damaging. He only had 12 disposals, and I reckon if he has an injury-free season and he can get some consistency, then I think he's in for a big season in 2020.
Yeah, and again, I think he's hit the nail on the head. I think Cunners, if he can stay fit, as I just previously alluded to in the video, he's going to be a very, very important player to Carlton. I think what Cunners does well as well, I think it's kind of underrated, is even though he doesn't get the ball in them positions, he impacts contests. He influences decisions because he doesn't let you have easy ball. And for me, the thing with Cunners is he's got the footy IQ, the footy smarts. And for me, that's something that we really have to understand about Cunners. He hasn't played a lot of football of late. And the more he gets better. But you do see it He has that there was that willingness to have a snap for goal inside 50 that didn't quite come off. And these are the kind of players that do make the difference between finishing 14th and finishing 8th. The players that are looking to make things happen. You can see his heat map, he influences that literal half forward line. That is where he lives. And for me, when you look where the tackles are, that is an important thing going forward. And it's a very underrated tackle stat for me. Them stats are really underrated. Where do people make the tackles? It's all right making the tackles in the middle of the park. Everyone does. Anyone can do it. But in these positions here where it's advantage backline, traditionally they are outnumbering you. And look, he really looks to make a contest happen. I think it's a really exciting prospect moving forward for Cunners. And I agree with what Kayne said there. He is that kind of player that he's got a high ceiling. He has got a high ceiling. His output can be really high. We just need to keep him fit. Let's look at the mercurial hero in Sam Docherty. And it's great to see the number 15 run out on any day when Carlton are playing. And as we see his heat map here, had a lot of the kick-ins as we know. But I mean, one thing that is exciting about me is he offers that outlet ball. You look at this plethora of marks in the bottom right-hand side in the pocket, and he offers that outlet ball. He offers that valve, and you can see the way that Teague wants to play is he's looking to play from the back. And this guy here is going to be key to that if Carlton are going to do that moving forward. There was a few times as well that we saw some wonderful breaks. And as the highlights roll, what we'll do is we'll just listen to a bit from Kayne.
Oh, I can't describe how good it was to see him run back out in the park today. His skills were a bit rusty at the start of the game, but as the game went on, he got better and better as the game went on. I love to see his leadership when Simo got pushed down on the ground, and then Docherty come over to remonstrate his teammate. I just love the leadership he brought then.
And yeah, I agree with Kayne there. It gives a buzz. I thought that what he's touched on there, that tackle and that reaction to Cade Simpson, they're the kind of things that kickstart teams. It was something that we've been criticised of the last 2 years, of not having enough heart, not having enough tenacity. And he's got that. You know he bleeds blue. You know he loves playing for Carlton. And one thing that excites me about his game yesterday, even though it was very rusty, you could see there was ring rust, was he looked to take the game on. And when he gets a bit more match sharp, then kicks will start paying off. You look at this plethora of kicks on the right-hand channel there. That is where Carlton are going to really succeed. If he can get that quick ball into the hands of Murphy, into the hands of Martin, into the hands of Walsh, things will happen. He is a transitional force, and there's no getting away from it. 2 years ago, this was the best player in the comp at what he did. And if he can reach anywhere near them heights, the game style that he's been implemented is only going to get better. For me, 19 touches, 7 marks and 2 tackles from a guy that hasn't played football in over 700 days is pretty good. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's players who have played week in, week out for Carlton who would struggle to ascertain these numbers. So for me, it's really exciting. Another thing that I enjoyed is how he gets up the ground as well. He really does create another channel, another avenue for Carlton to attack, and options win you football matches. Now let's look at probably for me the best 2 on the ground, and we'll start with our new boy Zach Fisher. Now to me, Zach Fisher, in the back end of 2018, before he got injured, he looked our best player in a really weak side. He really started to come of age. And then there was kind of last year, the decision of getting rid of Bolton, bringing in Teague. He kind of looked like he suffered. Now for me, when we got rid of midfielders who were young, Zach Fisher was always them ones who I thought deserved to stay. I thought he always showed his willingness. And you look at this heat map here, this is elite. Like, you are talking here, this is what we want from midfielders. 27 touches and they're littered all around the ground. If you look at the good players now in the midfield, they no longer have a cluster of possessions in the mid and then the rest, like you might have one in the 50, forward 50. That they are around the ground. And you look here, his heat map, where he's got the touches, they're all over the place. And for me, we touched on it at the start of the video. The way that Teague wants to play is create space, and it's the exploitation of space. It's the exploitation of movement. This guy's going to benefit when Murphy's there. This guy's going to benefit when Cripps is here because he's going to have more space. Because when you're tagging and you're looking to influence a midfield, Zach Fisher ain't the name that comes off the top of your head. But when he plays like this, it suddenly is. And it is then going to allow a tactical shift from the opposition that frees up Walsh, that frees up Cripper, that frees up Murph. Players who are good users and good distribution of ball. And for me, it's really exciting. Let's have some quick words from Kayne as some highlights roll, and we'll get back into him.
He's just so silky and all that. So he was definitely in the best out of the best players who played today. He played mostly at the centre, a lot of centre bounces today, and I just loved he played there because he's just so silky with his moves, and yeah, I think he's going to have a good season for us this year.
I think he's right about Fisher. I think he is one of them players that we can be excited about. He is a real live wire. I think for me, some of the things that I enjoyed is the fact that he slotted back as well. He looked to intercept marks, and he did that twice just outside 50. And for me, that is an important thing. He looks to be that next kick that next kick inside 50. He looks to set up play. He looks to run on. He's looking for runners. And to me, I thought Zach Fisher's game was exemplary yesterday, and I am really excited moving forward because it can't be understated the influence of having players like Murphy and Cripper who draw attention to players like Zach Fisher who are going to suddenly have more freedom. Really exciting, really good game from him. I mean, the tackles probably weren't there. That's probably one takeout for me. But I mean, apart from that, his game was solid. Finally, let's look at the boy wonder. This guy just gets better every week we see him. And for me, I know the forums are littered with depression. Let's be a little bit positive. We've got this kid. And I mean, look, 28 touches, 3 marks, 5 tackles. I mean, that heat map there on the ball for a 19-year-old kid is ridiculous. Look at that chart. This chart wouldn't look out of place if I switched the name on the top and put Dustin Martin, put Patrick Dangerfield, put Nat 5, put whoever you want to name. This guy has got their talent. He's very clean with the ball at hands. I like the fact as well he tries that harder kick. And for me, what was really exciting is we saw him also come a bit more forward, and he really looked to influence the game. And that's where the top midfielders really earn their plaudits. If they can go across half forward and make something happen, it's that string to the bow, it's the Coggy, it's the Whitfield. Them type of players do that. Let's have let's see how our ground side reporter saw him, and let's just touch on it.
He definitely backed up why I called him to have an All-Australian year in 2020. His competitiveness was second to none for me, and he just never gave up. I can't see him having second-year blues this year. And he was definitely a standout for me in today's game.
I think Kayne was totally right. I think he is a guy that is Brownlow All-Australian bound. And for me, I think where you look for that is his ability to look for the next runner, his ability, his vision. I think the ability as well to look to attack the ball. There was that mark in the corridor that he intercepted. There was the tackles all around the ground. He's a real tenacious player. He combines the aggression of Mitch Robinson, but he's got that beautiful sleight of turn of skill of a Dangerfield. And I think that's really exciting moving forward. This guy, for me, is already in our top 3 players. And I think he's going to be someone who benefits even more when Cripper comes back, when Murphy comes back. Because for me, he looked to slot in that kind of quarterback role between halfback and midfield. And I think that's where, for me, when looking at Teague's game plan and looking at the training sessions, that's where Murphy lives. We want this guy more that next kick inside 50, that aggression type play. That's where he does his most damage. And for me, when you look at his disparity of touches, his engine is just phenomenal. Real key cog for Carlton Football Club. And I think moving forward, we've got ourselves one heck of a player. In summary, it wasn't the game that we wanted, but I thought there was enough signs there to see where we are. A bit of a reality check. I think if anyone thinks that Carlton has got depth to win flags, I think you're mad. I think we've got depth to cover injuries, and genuinely, injuries occur to your squad players. They don't occur. It's very rare that a top-level player gets injured. It's happened to us a few times, and it happens once a year, really, to a team, but it's usually your workhorses, your engine, and I think we have got players that will come in. I don't think you'll see that type of forward line ever again. And for me, my take out of that game was that Wheatering came of age. He under pressure, he looked 8 intercept marks. He looked good. I thought Walsh and Fish really came up, and that's an exciting thing moving forward, to know that Carlton can move that ball, and then that if Cripper gets tagged or Murphy gets tagged, that's 2 players off the ground for them effectively, and it's allowing them more freedom and space to run. I thought credit to Fremantle, they had their injuries and they really took the game to Carlton. And I thought particularly in the 4th quarter, we kind of just fell out of love with the game. You could see the intensity levels dropped. Do I read into it too much? I really implore you not to, because a lot of people who were saying, oh, we can't say it's a practice game, are the ones who were saying it was a practice game when everyone was getting excited we beat Collingwood. So to me, you can't have it both ways. You've got to be consistent. And one thing that I try and be is consistent. My lid's still off. I still think there's a lot of signs. And to me, that's not our best 22. And all it told me was what I already knew. That if we have a few injuries, we're up the Khyber, as it were. But the main thing is that them players are going to come back. And I can't overestimate the importance to players like McKay, Murphy and Cripper are to our system, because they draw and they create space for others which the other players can exploit. And you could see that there was a real identity in where the ball was being moved, and it required movement, it required space, it required intelligent use, and that wasn't there. But when players like Murphy, we know that they use the ball well. Cripper genuinely uses the ball well too. I think moving forward, let's judge us on the Brisbane game a little bit more. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you guys. I hope everyone's feeling a little bit better after this video. Love the Blues, love the fans. Subscribe and like the channel, please. And we'll see you soon, hopefully with some good news against Brisbane. Go Blues.